This is OffPlanet Radio.
Welcome to another dimension, a dimension of insight, a dimension of understanding. You are entering the place where reality collides with truth. There are no limits, there are no boundaries. This is OffPlanet Radio.
Well, good evening and welcome to OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Maugans, and we are late coming to air tonight. There was a streaming issue. When aren't there streaming issues? When aren't there technical issues? When isn't something failing? It seems like a long time ago this was all a lot easier in an era of tape decks and tubes and analog things, phone lines, old-fashioned stuff, that actually used to work. And I guess we can be grateful for the technology we have. It enables us to do what we're doing now. But I do wonder what we've lost in the process. The digital world is a swirling mass of electrons that are speeding up our brains and causing us to behave frenetically and in ways that I think have a lot to do with some of the things that we talk about on this show. And it is Friday night, December 5th, 2014, entering into the end of the year. I'll call it that. They call it the holidays, the end of the year ritual by which the Kingdom of Usury attempts to balance its books and lure the unsuspecting into a season of gala in the name of false deities, that deity being Mammon, the god of money, the one that you weren't supposed to worship, remember, but we forgot that a long time ago. And then we took the birth of Christ and we rolled it into the Roman Saturnalia. And now we have a mess. Because people are distracted by materialism and because they don't understand that their spiritual journey is the exact opposite of everything that they've been taught. This hour coming up, we are going to have a guest. We have Sheriff Richard Mack is going to join us. He can only be with us for about a half an hour, so that will occur at the bottom of this hour. And it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say. He's going to update some situations that have to do with present state of America, the world of law enforcement, and Ferguson. We're going to talk about that. That is the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association of America, which he heads up, which he founded. And I think whatever he has to say is going to be very interesting because it's coming from somebody who has been on the inside as a law enforcement officer and has basically vowed himself to uphold the Constitution. What a concept in an age when the police are behaving so badly. And I have a clip here I want to play because a little bit of time to fill tonight. Coming up in the second hour, by the way, tonight is James Martinez. The website is jamesmartinezmedia.net. And James has been on this show before. He's come on to talk about Walter Boert and Operation Mind Control. And James is what's called a media ecologist. He is an analyst of the political landscape as relates to media, as relates to things affecting our neural networks. And he was the host of a very successful radio show out in Los Angeles on Achieve Radio Network called Cash Flow, a show that was pretty much responsible for being part of taking on the banking system on the west coast of the United States early in the 21st century. And he has since moved on to other projects, and I'm sure he'll talk about all that as well. I think in leading up to Sheriff Mack tonight, we need to examine better where this world is going, where America is going, and where America goes, so goeth the world, because America truly is the dog that wags the tail in this case. So we're going to play this clip. This will take about 5 minutes, and this will kind of summarize where we're headed in America, where we've been, and how successful have the cabal really been.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
From 1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder. And we still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive.
Vice President Joe Biden calls the newest graduates of the Air Force Academy strategic thinkers as well as warriors, and the future of the new world order.
It allows us to refocus our intelligence and military assets and resources to other parts of the world where they are needed, where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century in a way consistent with American interest and the common interest.
During an event honoring the 223rd anniversary of Poland's constitution last night, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said we are seeing a new 21st century world order being built, and although there are conflicts and complications, there's still hope.
I think what's more hopeful, and maybe than any other time in the history of the world, is that we have more opportunities, have more possibilities, and more resources.
We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States, and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. I congratulate you on taking your place on the long gray line. But the world is changing with accelerating speed. This presents opportunity, but also new dangers. It will be your generation's task to respond to this new world.
Over the last 2 years, journalists and activists have been fighting a specific provision in the annual National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, through a lawsuit called Hedges v. Obama. It's called Section 1021B, otherwise known as the Indefinite Detention Clause, which gives the U.S. military the right to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens anywhere in the world, including right here in America.
This not only attacks your First Amendment rights, it attacks your Fifth Amendment rights, your Due Process Clause, because this gives not the U.S. government, but the U.S. military the right to detain you and indefinitely with no due process.
Now, when I was in America, I don't often say this, but I might as well say it here tonight. My driver, who has carried all the prophetic preachers across America before me, told me, he said, every time we get to a bridge, you watch. And we went through 38 states in 2.5 weeks, and every bridge we went near, there were men working underneath it, putting in steel girders. He said, that is for the United Nations tanks that are going to come in and take over America shortly. Is everybody clear what I'm saying tonight? This goes on tape. The whole of America will be inundated with United Nations troops. In fact, they're training now.
Heavy artillery rocked downtown Tampa today as military gunships and helicopters roared by the convention center. Now, this was all part of the annual Special Forces Operations Convention. And while it wasn't a real invasion, our Chris Trankman says it looked about as real as it could get.
This was different. This was a first for me. Usually no one sees what we do.
The display featured Apache helicopters speeding overhead, while bigger Black Hawk choppers carried highly trained operatives as part of a make-believe invasion.
In the distance, they must travel to the target.
The spectacle rivals any show.
And I guess you would say that listening to that clip would convince anybody that with the succession of presidents we have incrementally continued to advance the New World Order against the conscious will of most of the people of this planet. It was the plan from the very beginning, going back 150 years ago, with the installment of the 14th Amendment, which was the linchpin that allowed the United States to begin to move into a socialist empire. It's hard to imagine people thinking this long term, but I'll remind you of what Albert Pike wrote to Guiseppe Manzinni in 1871, wherein he predicted that it would require 3 world wars to accomplish the goal of building a new world empire. And using the Masonic lodges and the Illuminati, getting them inside the power systems and understanding that the installation of socialism, communism was to be the framework by which this system would be launched onto the global scene. Pike predicted that the First World War would be brought about in order to, quote, permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia, and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The Second World War would be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. The Third World War would be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. If you study Zionism long enough, you realize that it isn't so much about Jews as it is about an order that was founded on the ancient principles that have continued down through the world system in what is known as the Sanhedrin. The very same people who pioneered the political uprisings in the period around the life of the being called Jesus Christ, Isha, the Messiah, the great prophet. At that time, we were almost in parallel then with what was going on in Israel. At that time, now, I kind of tangled that up in my head a little bit. If you look at the zealots that lived in Israel at that time, they were the political operatives. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because the burgeoning internet has given us an opportunity, but the opportunity is rapidly being squandered. The ability for everybody to have a voice was probably as much a part of the plan as anything we could have imagined in terms of dissembling the will of the people. The wonderful thing about the internet is that everybody's got a voice. The horrible thing about the internet is everybody's got a voice. And they are the voices of division and dissension and the splintering and fragmenting to 1,000 different views about some very critical and important things that have to do with law, the underpinnings of a constitutional republic, and the philosophical aspects of freedom itself. We now have people that extol the virtues of anarchy. Let me say that again, anarchy. I don't know how you think you get to order through anarchy, but that's exactly what was being brought up in that famous speech from George H.W. Bush that was delivered on September 11th, 1990, 11 years before the towers fell, and America began spiraling down into its present state of wars with the very people predicted by Albert Pike. What a perfect setup. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantages of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. Anybody that wants to go back and reference the Program for a New American Republic, PNAC, which was published prior to the election of George W. Bush in 2000, will see that this same plan was basically being mapped out by PNAC at that time. The conservatives, the right-wing Republican Party, articulated the need then for another, quote, Pearl Harbor. They don't squander their opportunities, do they? You heard Joe Biden in that speech addressing military cadets and telling them that they had a unique place in history because this was the time when they were going to bring the New World Order into fruition. Is this fear porn? Is this just more of the same gloom and doom that you hear every day on alternative radio? I hope not, because that's really not what I've ever done. And in fact, the show has been remarkably optimistic even in the face of some pretty horrible things over the years. I hold to a very optimistic view of humanity because I know about the war that is going on right now. I know that humanity is in a state of ascension. Gosh, even that term just becomes so trite, and yet it's so important to understand. The plans of the Illuminati are based on prophecy. They're based on the understanding that in this time, with the shifting of the ages, there would come a shift in the energetics of the planet, in the vibratory presence of human consciousness, and that humanity would begin to move itself into position to go into another spiritual level. fearing this, they being the pawns of these archontic beings that control this planet, they needed to be able to engineer something that would basically take down the human evolutionary spiral. Not Darwinian evolution, but evolution on the scale of growth and change and advancement. Because human beings basically are here in this present life, in this present time, to both learn and to teach, to be part of a great creation that is taking place. And that creation is very much spiritual, but it's also occurring on the physical plane. This is the great war that nearly all of the apocalyptic writings have talked about, and yet we've missed the nuances of it. Christianity continues to insist that there will be this great 7-year event called Armageddon, and that, well, depending on whose view you have, a lot of people will be raptured up to heaven and taken out, or if you're a New Ager, the extraterrestrials will take you off planet, and you will sit out Armageddon that way. What we don't realize is that we've been in Armageddon for almost 100 years. What we don't realize is that this game plan that was outlined most notably in the book of Revelation in the Bible is also the game plan that the Illuminati themselves have followed. Is it the chicken or is it the egg? It's a little hard to tell, but they're certainly aware of it, and they know more than we do because they have the secret writings secreted in the Vatican that would reveal the full detail of this plan and the intent to involve extraterrestrials as part of this great deception. And so it's a very complex scheme of things that we're dealing with, and because most of it's so exotic that the average person can't wrap their mind around it. The mainstream news has basically numbed human perception to a point of a 30-second news bite and some video, all the while visually assaulting your eyes with streamers and a barrage of visual information that produces a hypnotic state that basically places you into an altered state while you are watching the news. The speeded up, bit-by-bit array of assaults that we face when we view the internet as well. Facebook is a great example of this because it's a constant barrage. It's a minute-by-minute uploading of random and scattered and novel and the completely ludicrous ramblings of human beings as they go through their days. The cat pictures, the pizza orders, the YouTube videos, all the random errata that is thrown into your eyes is designed to short-circuit your ability to be able to comprehend what is going on in your world. The ability to sit down and be quiet and to simply be has been stolen from us in the electronosphere that we live in. The barrage of Wi-Fi, ultramagnetic waves, radio waves, microwaves have taken our nervous systems and twisted them in such a way that we no longer have the comfort of our own minds anymore. And so, through a combination of guile and technology and brute force, the masters of this present age have managed to engineer what is in fact this burgeoning new world order system. And in the kernel of all of this, the most important aspect that we've missed, in my opinion right now, is to thoroughly study the laws that govern this world. Because most people, above all else, do not know real law. They don't understand the laws that govern their day-to-day lives. They don't understand everything from why they're able to be taxed by the IRS to ticketed by the local police. One of the things that the internet has done is it has completely twisted the concepts of law and the understanding of fundamental freedoms that we have been given. History has been twisted. History has been completely turned around on its head as a result of this ongoing rewriting of both history and laws themselves. And as a result of that, you have people out there running cottage industries, doing speaking engagements, running very large websites and YouTube channels, and what they are promoting is more of the dysfunction of the human mind in terms of tuning us away from genuine principles that enable us to connect. And so this interview with Richard Mack tonight is our way of kind of holding out one stream in which you can tap into right now, and that is getting back to the basics of the Constitution. Those who heard my interview last week with Stephen John Miller also heard an exposition of law for the common man that you can avail yourself to. And it's time, people, that you began to study the fundamentals again and get away from the New Age woo-woo that you have been fed. I'm going to take a very short break here. I need to connect, and we'll be back for the next half hour with our interview with Sheriff Richard Mack. We'll be right back with Off-Planet Radio.
What once was whole was split asunder. And in its place there arose two worlds. Worlds as different as daylight and darkness. Virtue and evil.
This is OffPlanet Radio.